So I'm very happy, Sherm, to have you with me today, and you will tell me your story about how ozone helped you. And from what I understand, it helped you in mainly two different areas. One, it was with your knee pain, and so I hope you'll be able to tell me what you did there exactly. And the other thing was a chronic cough that you had, right?
Right.
Okay,
Right.
so tell us a little bit about that.
Well, first of all, I got into a number of years ago from my daughter-in-law who was had colon cancer, and all of a sudden I started trying to find other modalities to try to help, and ozone came up big time. And from there, I started studying, and at the time I was having knee problems, and I studied to the point of where I started to give myself knee injections with ozone, and it made a big difference for me. My doctor has told me I should have both knees replaced, and and I didn't want to do that, and so I've been trying to find other ways to delay that procedure. So I got into it that way. Um, I've The other thing that I had going on at the time for a number of years is I'd have this cough where I'd cough a lot, and it got really quite bad when I about a year ago when I was in Costa Rica, and I was well. First of all, I started to get a lot of congestion, and it was hard to breathe, and I fortunately had called a doctor about it because I was worried about being in the waves and surfing where I get in a compromising position. And I called a friend who's a doctor, and she told me to get some inhalants, which I did, and started to take Allergen, Allegra pills, and so on, and they helped a lot. So I would use this, and then in case I needed a rescue inhaler, I would do that. Anyway, and then I would take an allergen, uh, which helped a lot. It helped me in that area, but it never ended the cough. It just kept going. So when I got back from Costa Rica, I went in and I had tests done, and I found out that I was a little bit of asthma, and I was allergic to molds and dust, and in Costa Rica, that was a perfect place to have all that occur. So for about 8, 9 months, I was taking these inhalers through the year, and it was really those things would help. But it was I was always looking for some other way to deal with this. And so, to make a long story short, I went to an ozone doctor here in the Salt Lake area, and I decided to do a 10 pass, and with the cough he mentioned, he says, "Why aren't you breathing ozone through the olive oil?" And he had an olive oil deal there, and I went, I just have never done it, which was something that it's amazing I hadn't, because I had been studying ozone. I knew about it, but for some reason I never did. And so I decided to do that, and it immediately changed everything for me. So that was the big deal for me. But it was such an annoyance, this problem. My wife was always, well, in fact, let me get her here. Maybe she can tell how it was for her on all the coughing. Here's
Well,
Hi, Sherry.
how are you?
I'm good.
For
How are
me,
you?
um, I would be in grocery stores and I could hear him on the other side of the grocery store coughing, so I always knew where he was in the grocery stores. Whenever we would go get massages, it was like if he was anywhere near me, I'm like, oh, he must be just right over there. So I always identified him by his cough, and he always would say, no, I don't cough. And I'm like, you cough all the time. But he didn't realize, I think, how much he coughed until he did the ozone. And then once he did the ozone, he said, you know what? I'm not coughing anymore. And I'm like, oh, yeah. I mean, if anybody knows it, it's me, because it was chronic. and I don't even think he was conscious of it. So it's go ahead.
Wait a minute. So it was so bad, and so he was coughing so often that when you would get lost at the supermarket, you would still always know where he is because you would always hear the cough. Yes.
Yeah, I could identify him by his cough in a crowd. In a crowd, I can do that. It was that much. It was coughing, and it wasn't only coughing. It was like, it was clearing his throat. It was just chronic. But he wasn't aware of it until, Costa Rica maybe is when it got. I don't know. But now he does realize he's not coughing anymore, and it's like changed my life.
Okay, so here's my question. So now, how do you find him at the supermarket if he's...
I don't. I have to walk up and down all the aisles.
Give me a phone call.
You're giving a phone call, right? Yeah, so my identifier's gone. Anyway, so no, it's made a huge difference in my life, this ozone thing. And I even use it now when I'm feeling like tight-chested or a cold coming on or something like that. And it does just opens me right up. So it's a beautiful thing.
Awesome.
Yeah. So,
Thank you.
Welcome.
So the other thing for me is I decided to take the risk because when you become dependent on inhalers and pills, it's very, very scary to decide not to do that. But I have these, so I can, in case something were to happen, I would just take them. I'm not afraid to hurry up and take something that might be weird. But since I stopped doing this, I decided to just stick with the ozone, breathing it through the olive oil.
So how often do you do the breathing, and how long when you do it?
Well, at the beginning, I was doing it on a daily basis. And by the way, I started very slow. Anytime I do this stuff, I'm always, let's go a little, just in case, you don't know. For me, I'm very cautious. So I started like for 10, 15 minutes, and then I've built up. But at the beginning, I was doing it quite often because I was having this incredible results. And I was also a little bit afraid, like, wow, I should be taking these things and taking the pills. But I now, which has been 5 months, I haven't taken any of that for 5 months. And I am coming into a big allergy season, so I'm really excited to see how this works for that. Maybe have an update after the summer or something to see how that went. But thus far, I probably go for now about 40 minutes 2 or 3 times a week, just because I like that. If I have any kind of coughing at all, just any kind of congestion that I feel, I immediately do it. And it's made a big difference.
Mm-hmm. And so what are the settings that you're using? How high is the oxygen flow? What ozone concentration do you use?
Well, that's interesting. I started off pretty low, probably around 10 to 20. But right now I'm at, I go a half a liter, and I'm at, I'm just looking here on my little ozone machine here at a half. Yeah, I'm about 15. So that's what I'm doing. I might drop it down to the 13 or 11 range on the gamma. But the thing is, I wanted to, I'm tied up here, it looks like, show you. This is the ozone, the bottle I use right here. It's from PromoLife, which I love the size because there's really, you can get big ones. This is a really good size. And
so how often do you exchange the oil?
I exchange well, if I'm using it a fair amount, I'll change it every 2 weeks. Or a week if it's a lot. Like sometimes I'll have my kids might come over or whatever and use it because they're having congestion, and it seems to help them a lot too. So yeah, I probably could go a lot longer, but I exchange it every probably 2 to 3 weeks.
Just to be on the safe side, you exchange it regularly, pretty often.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And by the way, I got that with the discount, and I thank you for the discount that you give through your what is it, the coupon?
The code, yes, the discount code for the problem
Yes.
stuff.
Yeah, so it saved me money, and that was great. So thank you for that. So yeah, it's been a learning thing for me. Excuse me, I put that back. And I just, the thing that was just so weird, it was I had never done it, and I've known about ozone for like 3 years, and I just, it was like, oh, does that really make a difference? And for me, it's made a huge difference.
So your official diagnosis was asthma, and what else, or was that
allergies? And then they said it was an asthma. So, and when I was young, I did have asthma, but I haven't told my doctor yet, which and she's wonderful. I've appreciated what she's done, but I think I will probably mention it to her that I'm doing this other approach, and I think she'll be cool with it, but we'll find out.
you're not using the inhalers now at all, or you using them less, or what changed?
I have not. Once I stopped them in December, and right now we're in May. I have not taken pills or any of the inhalers.
But you're still doing this the ozone oil breathing regularly, like 2 or 3 times a week.
Yes.
As upkeep. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, and so the other area you said it was the knees. So you were in for a surgery. So do I understand this correctly that you had bone on bone? There was no cartilage, or
I'm bone on bone, and I went in and I have two. I went to one doctor. I won't use their names, but they're some of the top in the country, and people would know who they are. And I first of all went in and they did an MRI and they looked at my knees and they said we can't operate anymore. I could hardly walk, and that was the truth. I just could hardly walk. It would hurt. And, and so I decided to get it. And he says, you're going to have to just put up with it as long as you can and then get your knees done. So I went to another great doctor and I had him, without him knowing, I just wanted a second opinion. He said the same thing. He said, just keep trying to do as much exercise. And then when you can't stand it, let's get a knee. So right now I give myself, I was giving shots a couple of times a week in my knee. I don't need to now. I did give it probably every 2 to 3 weeks. And I'm very careful, with the way I'm working out and, building certain muscles, watching my posture, etc. like that. And, this last year we did a trek in the Himalayas. I'm hiking every other day. But I don't run. I hike and walk, and that's kind of my thing. I just don't want to pound my knees to the point. I used to run marathons and that kind of stuff, and I do swim every other morning. That's how I try to keep these knees going. But no, if I'm starting to feel pain at all, I immediately just go ahead and give myself shots in my knees.
But you're not going in really deep, so can you tell us what size needle you're using and what ozone concentration?
I think I'm at about 40, as I recall, and I'm not sure the needle is about that long. It's not really very long, but I go in 2 different areas in my knees. I go in both, and I.
So it's the areas that I showed you, basically, right? Yeah. And you're using the same needle that I suggested, so it's probably a 13 millimeter.
Yeah, I could find it and grab it and show you.
Right.
But no, it's just been a real blessing,
So do the knee injections completely eliminate the pain or just reduce it?
I've had it where it just the pain goes away pretty close to immediate. Um, yeah, so it's pretty great. Now I'll put in one more caveat here. When it was really really bad, where I could hardly walk, I started the knee injections, but at the same time I did get a stem cell. I did stem cell. I dealt with a guy who's really good, and they took some marrow out of my bones and they spun it along with some fatty spun that, and it was about a 10%, 90 of the stem cells of my marrow and about 10%, I guess, of the fatty. And so I had that happen, and that made a big difference. In addition, the guy was familiar with ozone. He dealt with it, my doctor, and he was not using it, but he said that would be a great thing to do in addition. So, so the combo of that has made a difference. But anyway, that's my knees and stem cell experience.
Awesome. But I thought you also had an accident a few weeks or months ago when you were in Costa Rica, something with your neck, and you also had some injections into your neck. Or was it?
This last year was pretty great. So what happened is I had kind of hurt my back on a tractor. We're ranchers, and I was on the tractor and I kind of hurt it. But when I was out in Costa Rica, I was paddleboarding into a big wave, and my back went out on me, and I went and got an MRI, and there, because I could hardly walk, literally, it was horrible. And I went. This was in Costa Rica. I got the MRI. They have great deals in Costa Rica on MRIs. It was like $250, which was great. But I had two very bad herniated discs, and actually one doctor here had told me when I sent them back that one of them was leaking. So they said you definitely needed probably surgery if you would have been in the States. But fortunately, in a little town, there was one ozone doctor, and I went in and I saw him a week after it, and I could hardly move. He gave me ozone shots right into the muscles, and it immediately just loosened up, and I started to get better. And so I went to him, but it was a pretty chronic problem for me. I actually could not surf for about 30 days as I would build my core muscles and get healed up and so on. So this doctor had learned all his stuff in Cuba, and it was really, really fun to watch what he was doing. So that was what happened.
So was it just that one ozone shot that he gave you into your back, or did you have to come back for?
Oh, no. He gave me 4 shots in the back each time. It's highly reasonable there. It was like $30 for the experience. And I would come back at least once a week minimum. So
are you still thinking about having surgery for that? No.
No, and I'm now doing lots of exercises. My whole regime is to build, do the right stretching and strengthening and so on. So no, there's days I don't even know I have a back, which is wonderful. So it's a daily regime. I ended up being very careful on getting the right mattresses and to support my back, because he said it was really, really bad. And I'm 63, so I have to be. I just need to be very careful what I'm doing and be smart about it so I can keep going.
This is awesome. This is really, really great stuff. So is there any other ozone experience you had that you would like to share?
Well, I've done a number of direct IVs to myself, but I've done a bunch of 10 passes with this doctor here, and I have just found that it's a wonderful way to go for maintenance when I'm starting to feel weird at all, or I'm going to go on a big trip or whatever, or when I come back, I'll maybe just do a 10 pass and then get a bunch of minerals to just, so I'll feel the best I can and have my immune system up. So, no, I'm a real believer in that. Ozone is a great tool to have in your quiver to build up your immune system. It's one of many, but it's one of my go-tos for me.
That's awesome. So you have your whole setup, right? You have, I believe, an ozone setup in Costa Rica and one in the States. So do you think this is a good investment to buy one's own equipment?
Oh yeah, it was interesting when I first started into ozone. I was just going on the YouTube trying to find out as much, and I got Dr. Robert Rowland. I listened to him, and he said, at some point in your life, he says there's a real possibility in the future that there could be a big virus or something that comes and people are just getting very ill. And he says the best thing you could do is find an ozone doctor, make sure you have one, because if things happen, it could help you in the disease. And this was, by the way, before he went down to Sierra Leone on the Ebola problem. He was just leaving for that, and he said, because if you run into something, you can at least get ozone, and it could make a huge difference in some weird virus that came along. So that's when I went, and I wanted to learn all about it, so I learned all about it, and I think was one of the wiser purchases that I ever made, was to get into the ozone, and it's blessed us, my family. Those that want to use it. There's, as you know, there's a lot of people that think it's a bunch of crap. So, and that's fine. At this point in life, I don't, I just do what works for me. And if somebody's interested, that's great.
Hmm. Well, Sherm, I don't have any more questions. Thank you very much for sharing your experience with ozone, and thank you very much to your wife, Sherry. And that was great. So,
Hey.
thanks a lot.
Hey. Thank you for all you do.